I do it for the people that like a rogue or like a villain. Because at the end of the day, that's what I am. I am a villain, so I might as well be what I am. And then, you know what, in this country, the letter of the law says as long as you're not being dishonest, you're not committing a crime. And I figure if I'm dressing like the Joker and I'm dressing as a villain, I should be allowed to be a villain and get away with it.
This is Damien Hammond, or what is more commonly known as the Joker of Nottingham, a man who slipped through the cracks of society, struggling with severe mental health conditions, and was left on the streets to spiral into an incredibly sad and shocking situation. From age 12, Damien was known to the law for minor offences, and by the time of his latest imprisonment 19 years later, had been convicted of over 110 offences. The timeline of when Damien decided to become the Joker is unknown, but according to court documents, his crime spree started escalating around 2016. By 2018, you'd really struggle to find somebody who lived around Nottingham city centre that didn't know of the Joker that wandered the streets. Seeing him around Nottingham dressed like the Joker all the time, seen this guy around Notts for years, the guy's a literal nutcase. I've seen that Joker guy so many times, I've grown to accept him as part of the bus stops and not a person since he was always there. Even when the police searched for him, which was almost a daily activity, they simply asked locals, "Have you seen the Joker?" Which of course they had, just perhaps not recent enough to point them in his direction. Now let's take a bit of a step back before we get more into his story, since the Joker was actually much closer to his fictional home than reality would indicate. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Ys Online, the Ark of Napistim, is out now and available to download using the link in the video description. Have you ever felt a strong sense of urgency to rush to the aid of fictional characters? Me neither, until now. They've got anime girls with elf ears, and if that wasn't enough, all kinds of furries. I mean, if that isn't a selling point, I don't know what is. Not that they have to sell you anything, because the game is absolutely free to download and play. Protect the land of Canaan, progress your character through one of 4 classes, warrior, ranger, mage or assassin, each with 2 additional subclasses like the ninja and navigator for the assassin or ice and pyro for the mage, dungeons to explore, loot to gather, bosses to battle, pets to raise, homes to furnish, food to cook, outfits to collect, and of course most importantly, waifus to protect. A retro art style that fans of the East series will find familiar, but with modern anime style rendering for high quality visuals, a classic storyline including all the series fan favourite characters, and new character exclusive side stories, fully voice acted, stunning cutscenes, and ready for you to download and play now. So thank you to Ys Online for sponsoring today's video. Click the link in the video description to get started, and on with the content. Nottingham is a city in England's Midland region known for its role in the Robin Hood legend, surrounded by historically interesting locations like Sherwood Forest, where the Merry Men allegedly made their home. One place in the Nottinghamshire region that people may not know about is, funnily enough, a small village called Gotham. The name Gotham comes from Old English goat home, and the correct pronunciation is actually Gotham. The village became famous for stories depicting the inhabitants of being stupid or taken with madness, though it's believed that the reason for this was more of a ruse to prevent a royal highway being built through the village, saving themselves the work of creating and maintaining it. You see, back in the rule of King John, madness was thought to be contagious, so when King John sent his knights to scout the village to see if it was good for the road, they saw the villagers acting as if they were insane and left as quickly as they came. This meant that the road was never built in Gotham. So this was the known inspiration for the nickname given to New York City by American writer Washington Irving all the way back in 1807. Over 100 years later, the Batman comics were created and they were originally set in New York City. That is of course until writer Bill Finger saw the name Gotham Jewelers in a phone book and changed the name of Batman's home to Gotham City, which of course is a vastly different pronunciation but how you would read it, not in the Old English. So that's where the Joker comes from, which is a really perfect villain to live in a village known for its madness when you know the backstory of how it came to be. Now if that's not strange enough for you for this whole story, Wayne Manor, the home of Batman, was literally shot in the movies at a real estate known as Wallington Hall, which is of course also in Nottingham. So there we have it, we have Wayne Manor, we have Gotham or Gotham and the Joker, but unfortunately no Batman, at least as of yet. Now, it's very unlikely that Damien Hammond knew all of this, but he was a self-proclaimed obsessive about the comic book villain, the Joker. and he definitely knew about Gotham the Village, as he was seen there dressed in the permanent attire of the villain he saw himself to be. Now, it's very hard to find footage of the Nottingham Joker, it's very few and far between, but social media comments regarding his arrests or brief cop show fame illustrate that he truly played the part. He's a madman. Was driving my car through the town centre coming home from work. He walked out into the middle of the road in a 30 zone and pointed his cane at cars, ordering them to stop, laughed, and then continued to walk off. I've seen this guy on a night out, ran out from the dark wanting to do card tricks, scared the shit out of me and my mate. He cursed me out for not wanting to see his magic trick. For money, obviously. Though of course, given the fact he was supposed to be an insane villain and not just making jokes, people's interactions were not always funny, often involving violence or theft. He threatened to stab me with a flute. I once stopped in on Tesco on the way home, and this guy just walks in, grabs 2 boxes of celebrations, and leaves. He's a freaking Fruit Loop. He was begging outside Poundland on Parliament Street, Nottingham, standing in front of the door, stopping people on their way into the store, asking for money. Then chased someone in the store, throwing abuse at them because they told him to shift out the way. He was screaming like a madman. I helped the security guy remove him from the store. He then gave me abuse, so I just got my phone out and said I'm calling the police, and he ran off. I didn't even have any charge on my phone. Who's the Joker now? So it's pretty clear that Damien had picked the perfect role for someone with a very obvious untreated mental illness. He was living at an unknown address, which usually indicates homelessness. He was seen on the streets begging across the city, frequently stealing whatever he could, and ended up in court dozens of times. In 2016, he was given a 12-month prison sentence for wounding, which involves doing grievous bodily harm to another individual. In 2018, he was handed a suspended sentence for theft, possession of an offensive weapon, and indecent exposure. A suspended sentence, of course, meaning if he committed no further offences, he would not have to serve that time. Unfortunately, it didn't take very long for him to go on a 3-month crime spree, for which he was picked up multiple times by the police, and later that same year ended up in front of a judge again. This time for obstructing police and unlawful possession of cannabis, which triggered the previous conviction and earned him 22 weeks in jail with a 3-year ban from Nottingham city centre, which of course for most people would be quite hard to enforce. I mean, how are you going to recognise most people on the street? But obviously you're going to notice the Joker walking around, as everyone frequently did. So what exactly did he do on his crime spree? Well, some of them include hitting an officer in the head while he was being searched for drugs, intimidating employees in stores, criminal damage involving spray painting the floors in bathrooms, and my personal favourite, which you might have actually seen the real Joker do, standing in traffic waving around a gun-shaped lighter. Unfortunately, it's not all fun, since upon hearing his sentence, he did scream, "Send me to prison, I don't care, see what you have done, I will kill today." Now, it's very clear from how exactly he did things, Damien was obsessed with the comic book villain. He was mimicking the things the real Joker would do, and from people's experiences interacting with him, it's clear he was becoming increasingly paranoid, and this was before going to prison. Met this lad down at Waterfront, showed me a card trick. He's obviously not all there, but seemed an alright lad. Said the police are constantly harassing him. He even showed me a card trick and said police are trying to kill him. I was like, what? After being released from his 22-week sentence, the Joker continued his antics, which involved not taking his prescribed antipsychotics and getting hooked on a drug known as Mamba. This is what is commonly referred to as a synthetic cannabis product, but has no similarities in use or effects, and is more in line with something much more sinister. It's common in England to hear people talk about spice, which is all over the place at the moment and really harming society. It's a very similar product to Mamba, and the people using this are often incredibly dangerous to be around, as they're prone to temper, lack of judgment, and will also do almost anything to get their next fix. Obviously not a great combination of things for someone with a proven history of untreated mental health issues, multiple stints in prison for violent crimes, a propensity for paranoia, and a fixation with a make-believe villain. So this is where the story takes a turn and comes to an end. On December 30th, 2019, a pair of local city workers were driving their van down Strelley Road, Nottingham, when they spotted a broken television outside a building. This is not an uncommon occurrence, as people will often leave unwanted possessions outside their residence, which are collected by local scrap dealers or city workers. Unfortunately, this television was the property of Nottingham's comic book villain. He spotted them from his window 14 feet up and began shouting aggressively that it was his property to leave it alone and how he was going to come down. They explained to him that it was their job to clean up the streets, so they should take it off the pavement. That's when the Joker picked up a bowling ball, wrapped it in a pair of jeans, held it outside his window, and let go. The bowling ball travelled from 14 feet in the air directly onto the head of one of the workers, instantly sending him to the ground and changing his life forever. The victim says his injuries affect him and his family daily, his personality has changed, and he must wear a card to explain why his behaviour in public might be considered odd. This will likely be the case for the rest of his life. In terms of what happened to the Joker, he then had a 2-hour standoff with police in which he threatened to kill anyone who approached him, and then he set himself on fire and jumped out of the window. Damien Hammond was later sentenced to 12 years in prison with an additional 4 years extended sentence period, which is handed to individuals who a judge considers to be of great danger to the public. The judge told Hammond during sentencing, "You are a volatile individual who will almost certainly offend again, and it would be short-sighted on me if I were to not protect the public. You are dangerous, and you need to be released only when the danger has subsided." Now, one comment on social media I want to draw your attention to is the following. Came across him a good few times at the tram stop, giving him a good stare back to show him he wasn't freaking me out, seemed to do the trick. Now, this comment obviously comes before the Joker was put in prison for 12 years for dropping a bowling ball on somebody's head, but I think it serves a good lesson that you should probably avoid trying to assert dominance with people who are clearly struggling with reality in their place within it, as you never really know what minor incident could cause a life-changing one. To end this, there is also a change.org petition which 9 people have signed, which reads, "Drop all charges against Damien Hammond, aka the Nottingham Joker," in which the body reads, "Free Damien Hammond from his 16-year prison sentence for attacking a council worker who was taking his property. Society made him like this, and his mental health issues were ignored." So that is the story of Nottingham Joker, a man who on the surface is a funny story, walking around dressed as a comic book villain, doing the things the villain would do in the popular movies and comics. Underneath is a severely unwell individual whom society failed to help for the decade they knew of his issues. As a result, he's spent years in prison and will spend many more. Meanwhile, his latest victim will spend the rest of his life in the prison of a broken mind.